I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my kitchen window, casting delicate patterns across the oak table where I sipped my coffee. At 70 years old, I had settled into a comfortable routine in the 2-story house that had been my home for over 4 decades. Each morning began with fresh coffee in the blue ceramic mug Richard had given me on our 25th anniversary, followed by watering the begonias on my back porch. My name is Megan Lewis, and I've been a widow for 18 years. Richard, my husband, had been a dedicated accountant at the same firm for 30 years before a sudden heart attack took him away. He left me financially secure, not wealthy by any means, but comfortable enough to maintain our home and live without constant worry. "Good morning, Mrs. Lewis," called Mrs. Patterson from next door as she collected her newspaper. She was in her 50s, a decade or so younger than me, but we'd been neighbors long enough to develop a comfortable friendship. "Good morning, Diana. Beautiful day, isn't it?" I called back, admiring how the October sun bathed our quiet suburban street in golden light. After watering my flowers, I returned to the kitchen to make a grocery list for the week. My son, Andrew, and his family were coming for Sunday dinner, a tradition we'd maintained since he was a boy. Andrew was my only child, now 42, an accountant like his father. He'd always been a good son, studious, respectful, and hard-working. As I jotted down ingredients for my famous pot roast, I glanced at the family photos lining the hallway wall. Richard and me on our wedding day in 1972, Andrew's high school graduation, a family vacation to the Grand Canyon when Andrew was 12. The most recent addition was Andrew's wedding photo from 5 years ago. I smiled, remembering how handsome he looked in his tuxedo, though a small frown crossed my face when I thought of his wife. My cell phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I still wasn't entirely comfortable with technology, but Andrew had insisted I keep it with me for emergencies. "Hello," I answered, slightly louder than necessary. "Mom, it's Andrew. Are we still on for Sunday dinner?" "Of course, honey. I'm making your favorite pot roast." "Great. Scarlett's excited to see you too." "Oh. And is it okay if we come around 4 instead of 2? Scarlett has a thing earlier in the day." A thing. It was always a thing with Scarlett. In 5 years of marriage, I'd never known her to be specific about these things that consistently delayed their visits or cut them short. "That's fine, dear. I'll see you both at 4. After hanging up, I sighed and continued with my list. I tried to be fair about Scarlett. She was beautiful and charming when she wanted to be. She worked at an upscale clothing boutique downtown and always dressed impeccably. But there was something about her that made me uneasy, a calculation behind her smile. Perhaps. Or the way her eyes assessed everything around her like she was taking inventory. Richard would have known what to make of her. He'd always been an excellent judge of character. "People show you who they are, Meg," he used to say. "You just have to pay attention." I missed his wisdom every day. 5 years earlier, I had been preparing dinner in this very kitchen when I heard Andrew's car pull into the driveway. It was unusual for him to visit unannounced, but I was always happy to see him. The front door opened, and I heard 2 sets of footsteps in the hallway. "Mom," Andrew called, his voice unusually animated. "Are you home?" "In the kitchen, dear." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and turned to greet him. Andrew appeared in his doorway, and beside him stood a slender blonde woman with perfect posture and a dazzling smile. She wore a stylish cream-colored dress that likely cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Mom, I want you to meet Scarlett Wright." Andrew's face glowed with happiness as he looked at her. The woman of my life. My heart squeezed at the sight of my son so obviously in love. Scarlett stepped forward, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Her handshake was firm but somehow cold, like a business transaction. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lewis," she said. "Andrew talks about you constantly." Her eyes, a striking shade of blue, assessed me from head to toe. Lingering briefly on my simple cotton dress and worn slippers, I suddenly felt shabby in my own kitchen. "Please, call me Megan," I said, trying to be welcoming. "Would you both like some coffee? I was just about to make mac and cheese for dinner, but I can whip up something else if you'd prefer." "Mac and cheese sounds wonderful," Scarlett said. though something in her tone suggested otherwise. Andrew always raves about your cooking. During dinner, Scarlett was the perfect guest. She complimented my modest home, asked thoughtful questions about my garden, and seemed genuinely interested in our family photos. She told amusing stories about difficult customers at the boutique and laughed at all of Andrew's jokes, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. "How did you two meet?" I asked, serving them each a second helping of mac and cheese. "At a charity gala," Scarlett replied. "The boutique where I work was sponsoring it, and Andrew's firm was handling the accounting." "She was the most beautiful woman in the room," Andrew added, looking at her adoringly. "I spilled champagne all over my shirt trying to work up the courage to talk to her." "And I thought he was adorable," Scarlett said, touching his hand affectionately. "So nervous and sincere, unlike most men I meet." When they left that evening, I stood in the doorway watching them drive away. Andrew's old Honda looking slightly out of place next to the shiny BMW Scarlett had arrived in separately. "What do you think, Richard?" I whispered to the empty house. There was no answer, of course, but I could almost imagine what he might have said. "Keep your eyes open, Meg." Over the next few months, Scarlett continued to charm me. She brought flowers when they visited, helped with the dishes without being asked, and remembered small details about my life that even Andrew sometimes forgot. When Andrew announced their engagement 6 months after that first dinner, I was genuinely happy for them. The wedding was small but elegant, held at a lovely garden venue outside the city. I paid for half the expenses without hesitation. Andrew was my only son, my only chance to be mother of the groom. Scarlett selected everything: the flowers, the menu, the music, the photographer. I just wrote the checks and smiled for the photos. "You look beautiful, dear," I told her on the wedding day, and she truly did in her designer gown with its delicate lace overlay. "Thank you, Megan," she replied, kissing my cheek carefully to avoid smudging her makeup. "I'm so happy to be joining your family." For the first few months after the wedding, Sunday dinners continued as before. Andrew and Scarlett would arrive promptly at 2, bringing a bottle of wine or a fancy dessert from the upscale bakery near their new apartment. They'd tell me about their married life, their plans for travel, their search for a bigger apartment, Scarlett's ambitions to become manager at the boutique. Then, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was reading in my favorite armchair when my phone rang. It was Scarlett, her voice uncharacteristically timid. "Megan, I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all, dear. Is everything all right?" "Well, actually," there was a pause. "We're in a bit of a tight spot this month with the apartment expenses. I was wondering if you might be able to lend us some money. Just $200. We'll pay you back on Friday when Andrew gets his paycheck." The request surprised me. Andrew had always been financially responsible, carefully saving since his first summer job at 16, but newlyweds often faced unexpected expenses, and $200 wasn't much. "Of course, Scarlett, I can transfer it right away." "You're a lifesaver, Megan, really." Friday came, but the money didn't. Instead, Andrew called with another request. "Mom, I hate to ask, but could you lend us another $300? Scarlett needs some new clothes for work, and I don't get my bonus until next month." "Is everything okay? Andrew, this isn't like you." "Everything's fine, Mom. We're just adjusting to married life, and there are more expenses than we expected. The apartment deposit was higher than we budgeted for, and Scarlett's car needed some work." I transferred the money immediately. After all, he was my son, and these seemed like legitimate needs. The pattern continued over the next 6 months. $300 for car repairs, $500 for a medical bill, $400 for a professional certification course Scarlett needed. Always with the same promise: "We'll pay you back soon." Always with the same excuse: "We're a little tight this month." After 6 months, my loans totaled almost $5,000. While I wasn't struggling financially, this wasn't a trivial amount from my retirement savings. During a Sunday dinner, I decided to bring up the topic gently. "Andrew, dear, I've been keeping track of the money I've lent you both, and it's adding up to quite a sum now." Andrew shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, you know we're going to pay you back." "I don't understand why you're keeping such exact accounts. We're family. Of course we're family, son. But $5,000 isn't a small amount. Scarlett intervened with her most charming smile. Megan, you're absolutely right. We've been careless about repayment. How about I give you my credit card as collateral? That way, you'll know we're serious about paying you back. I didn't want her credit card. I wanted my money, or at least a repayment plan. But Scarlett's offer seemed sincere, and I didn't know how to negotiate with my own family without seeming petty. That's not necessary. Scarlett, I trust you both. I just wanted to make sure you're keeping track too. A week later, Scarlett called me in a panic. Megan, I have an emergency. My card is maxed out, and I need to buy medicine for my mother. She has a terrible migraine. Can I borrow yours just for today? Scarlett's mother lived in Arizona and had never been mentioned as having health problems, but emergencies happened. I gave Scarlett my credit card information over the phone, expecting a single pharmacy charge. That night, I checked my statement online. There was indeed a $150 charge at the pharmacy, but there were also charges of $80 at a cosmetics store, $200 at a clothing boutique, and $30 at an upscale restaurant, all made within hours of our phone call. When I confronted Scarlett the next day, she answered with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Megan. I was near the mall after picking up Mom's medicine, and I saw some incredible sales. I just thought, since I was already using the card, I'm so embarrassed. I'll pay you back tomorrow. I promise. She didn't pay me back the next day, or the next week, or the next month. But she did continue to ask for my card for emergencies. An emergency for her sister's birthday present. An emergency for shoes she needed for a work event. An emergency for Andrew's anniversary gift. Always emergencies. Always urgent. Always with promises of immediate repayment that never materialized. After a year of marriage, Andrew and Scarlett moved to a larger apartment in a trendier neighborhood. They upgraded from their modest cars to newer models. Scarlett's wardrobe expanded with designer labels. Meanwhile, I had lost track of how much money had left my accounts. My comfortable retirement cushion was dwindling month by month, but every time I tried to discuss it, Andrew made me feel guilty. Mom, I don't understand why you're being so petty with us, he said during one tense Sunday dinner. You have enough money, and we're trying to get ahead. Dad would have wanted to help us. Petty. The word stung like a slap. Richard had been generous, yes, but he had also been prudent. He would never have approved of this endless drain on our savings. The Sunday dinners became increasingly strained. I would cook, they would eat, but the conversations always circled back to money bills they couldn't pay, unexpected expenses, opportunities they were missing due to financial constraints. If I had a better car, I could make better impressions with clients, Andrew would say, despite having purchased a new Audi just months earlier. If we could move to a better neighborhood, we'd have the right connections for my career. Scarlett would add, toying with her new designer watch. I listened in silence, knowing their words were indirect requests for more money. One afternoon, while reviewing my bank statements, I realized something chilling in the past 6 months. I had spent more money than I was earning from my retirement fund. My life savings were being systematically drained to finance Andrew and Scarlett's increasingly lavish lifestyle. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake until dawn, calculating how much money I had lost, how much they owed me, and how much longer I could sustain this situation before I was financially ruined. For the first time in 18 years, my morning coffee ritual brought no comfort. Something had to change. But I didn't know how to confront my own son without destroying our relationship. The following months became a slow torture of small lies and significant losses. Every week brought a new emergency that required my credit card, and every use of my card resulted in expenses I had never authorized. Megan, I need your card to buy medicine for Andrew. He has a terrible cold and needs some expensive cough syrup, Scarlett would tell me in a concerned voice. An hour later, my phone would receive notifications of $400 in purchases at clothing stores. When confronted, Scarlett always had an explanation ready. Oh, I forgot to mention I also needed a new blouse for work. My manager complained that my current ones look worn, and I can't risk losing my job in this economy. There was always a justification, always a reason why the extra expense was necessary or unavoidable, and I, who had raised an honest son, was beginning to doubt my own perceptions. The Sunday dinners evolved into financial review sessions. Scarlett would arrive with a mental list of upcoming expenses that required my support. Andrew's college friend is getting married next month. We need appropriate clothes for the wedding. I knew my son well. He had never mentioned this friend before. Andrew would nod without looking up from his plate, his silence a tacit endorsement of Scarlett's fabrications. I need $500 for a dress and shoes, Scarlett continued. I can't show up looking shabby. His friend's family is very well connected. $500 for a stranger's wedding to impress people I'd never meet. But when I tried to refuse, Andrew would deploy his new strategy: emotional manipulation. Mom, you don't understand how important this is for us. We're building social connections for our future. Dad would have understood that. The invocation of Richard's name was a new low. My late husband had valued integrity above all else. He would have been heartbroken to see our son using his memory this way. One Thursday afternoon, while I was tending to my garden, I received a call from my bank. Mrs. Lewis, we're calling to verify an unusual purchase on your credit card, a 1-200 transaction at an electronics store. Can you confirm you authorized this 1-200 electronics? I hadn't purchased any electronics. At which store was the purchase made? Tech World at the Metro Mall. No, I did not authorize that purchase. Please block the transaction and issue me a new card immediately. I hung up with shaking hands. Scarlett had my card since Tuesday to buy medication for a headache. The phone rang 20 minutes later. It was Scarlett, her voice shrill with anger. Megan, what have you done? The card is declined, and I'm standing at the grocery store checkout with a cart full of food. It's not your card, Scarlett, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. It's my card, and I blocked it because there were unauthorized purchases. Unauthorized. All the purchases I made were necessary. Was a 1-200 electronic purchase necessary? Silence on the other end, then a nervous laugh. Oh, that. Andrew needed a new laptop for work. His old one crashed, and he couldn't wait to discuss it with you. Why didn't you consult me before making such a large purchase? Because we knew you would say no. You always find excuses not to help us when we really need something. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I, who had been financing their increasingly extravagant lifestyle for 2 years, was now being cast as the villain for protecting what remained of my savings. Scarlett, go home. We'll talk when you're calmer. I can't go home. My card is full of groceries, and I can't pay for them. You need to come here and bring cash. I hung up the phone. For the next hour, my phone rang constantly. Scarlett, Andrew, Scarlett again. I let all the calls go to voicemail. I needed time to think. I gathered all my bank and credit card statements for the last 6 months and spread them across the dining room table. The numbers didn't lie. In January, I had $95,000 in savings. By June, that had dwindled to $68,000 in 6 months. $27,000 had disappeared. I reviewed every transaction, every charge, every purchase. Expensive restaurants, designer clothes, electronics, weekend getaways, spa treatments. Nothing that Scarlett had purchased with my money constituted a genuine necessity. The sound of the front door opening interrupted my calculations. Andrew and Scarlett walked into my house without knocking, as if they owned the place. Mom, what happened with the card? Andrew's tone was more weary than angry. I blocked it because I found purchases I didn't authorize. Scarlett flopped onto my sofa without invitation, arms crossed defensively. Megan, all those purchases were discussed with you. You can't just block the card every time you forget something. I didn't forget anything. Scarlett, a 1-200 laptop is significant enough that I would remember authorizing it. I told you Andrew needed new equipment for work. No, you told me you needed medicine for a headache. Andrew sighed and sat in the armchair across from me. Mom, sometimes emergencies change. Yes, she needed medicine. But then I mentioned my laptop problems, and when she saw the sale at Tech World, it made sense to handle both issues at once. A sale of 1-200, It normally costs $2,000, Scarlett interjected. It was a bargain. I stared at my son, this person I had raised to be honest and responsible, now justifying a $1,000 impulse purchase as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. Andrew, that laptop was not an emergency. It was a luxury. It's not a luxury, Mom. It's a necessary work tool. Then pay for it with your work money. Scarlett stood up dramatically. I knew you would react this way. You always find a way to make us feel guilty for asking for help. I'm not making you feel guilty. I just want you to respect my finances. Your money is always your money, Scarlett spat. We're family. Megan, family resources are shared resources. My money is mine. Scarlett, I worked 40 years for it. Andrew stood and began pacing the living room. Mom, we understand your concerns, but you need to understand our position too. We're trying to build our careers, to create a better life. Your support is crucial for us right now. I've supported you for 2 years. Andrew, I've spent more than $30,000 on you both. $30,000. Scarlett sounded genuinely offended. We haven't spent nearly that much. I pointed to the papers spread across the table. The statements are all right here. See for yourself. Neither of them approached the table. Neither wanted to confront the actual numbers. The point is, Andrew continued, we need to know we can count on you. Blocking the card without warning puts us in humiliating situations. Humiliating. Yes, Mom, humiliating. Do you know how Scarlett felt when her card was declined in front of everyone at the grocery store? It's not her card. Andrew, it's my card. It's the family card, Scarlett insisted. Those words resonated in my mind. The family card. My money converted into communal property without my consent. I think I need some time to think, I said finally. Time to think about what? Scarlett's voice was impatient. About whether I want to continue lending you my card. Of course you're going to keep lending it to us, Andrew said, genuinely surprised that I was even questioning it. We're your family. I stood and walked to the window. My garden looked beautiful in the afternoon sun. The red begonias were blooming profusely. The white geraniums stood tall and proud. The bougainvillea climbed elegantly along the fence. Everything I had nurtured with my own hands was thriving. Why couldn't my relationship with my son be equally beautiful? I want you both to leave, I said without turning around. Mom, please. I need to be alone. Andrew. I heard them shuffling toward the door. Before leaving, Andrew paused. We hope you reconsider your position. We don't want this to affect our relationship. The door closed softly. This time, there was no slamming, no shouting, just the sound of my dreams of a harmonious family slowly crumbling. But I didn't know then that this was only the beginning of something far worse. For 3 days, my house was wrapped in an eerie silence. No calls from Andrew asking for money. No surprise visits from Scarlett with new emergencies. It was as if they had decided to give me space to reconsider my decision to block the card. On Friday morning, while enjoying my coffee on the patio, I decided it was time to face reality completely. I had spent 2 years avoiding a detailed review of my finances, blindly trusting my family. It was time to assess the full extent of the damage. I sat at my computer and opened my online bank accounts. The numbers on the screen hit me like a punch to the stomach. 2 years ago, I had $120,000 in retirement savings. Now, just over $70,000 remained. $50,000 had vanished. I printed every statement from the past 24 months. The printer worked steadily for 20 minutes, spitting out page after page filled with numbers that told the story of my own naivety. I spread everything on the dining room table and began to categorize the expenses. Reasonable grocery purchases, occasional acceptable restaurant meals. Then there was everything else. March $500 at a jewelry store. I hadn't bought any jewelry. April $700 on women's clothing. I didn't wear 700 clothes. May $300 at a day spa. I didn't go to spas. June $1,000 on electronics. I barely knew how to use my basic cell phone. July $800 on perfumes and cosmetics. My perfume cost $30 and lasted me 6 months. The list continued, page after page. Every month contained purchases I had never authorized, expenses for things I would never use, money spent in places I had never visited. I picked up my phone and called my bank. "Good morning, Mrs. Lewis. How can I assist you today? I need detailed information on all my credit card transactions for the past 2 years. Can you send me a complete report?" "Of course. Is there a specific issue with your account?" "There are transactions I don't recognize." "I understand. We'll send you the full report by secure email within 1 business day. I also recommend checking if anyone else has access to your card." "Someone else," I whispered. "Scarlett." After hanging up, I went to my bedroom and opened the lockbox where I kept important documents: my passport, house deed, insurance policies, and Richard's will. At the bottom, I found something that chilled me to the bone: a photocopy of my credit card, front and back, including the 3-digit security code. In the corner was a note in Scarlett's handwriting: "For emergencies, S." When had she made this copy? When had she been in my bedroom, in my private lockbox, without my knowledge? Since when did she have unrestricted access to my financial information? The phone rang. It was Scarlett, her voice honeyed and sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something. "Megan, how are you? I've missed you these past few days." "I'm fine. Scarlett, good to hear from you. I have a tiny favor to ask. Do you remember your card's security number? I want to order something online, and I don't have the card with me." The world seemed to stop. She had a copy of my card and was now asking for the security code as if it were nothing, as if it were the most natural request in the world. "Where is my card?" "Scarlett, I have it, of course. Don't you remember giving it to me a few months ago for emergencies?" I didn't recall giving her my card permanently. I remembered temporary loans, one-day favors, specific emergencies. But according to Scarlett, I had authorized her to keep my card indefinitely. "Scarlett, I need you to return my card immediately." "Why did something happen?" "I need to have it with me." "But Megan, how will we handle emergencies? We'd have to bother you every time we need something urgent." "Yes, you'll have to ask for my permission each time." A long silence followed. "You know what? We should talk in person. I'm coming over." "No! Scarlett, just give me my card back." "I'm coming over," she repeated firmly, and hung up. 20 minutes later, I heard Andrew's car parking in front of my house. This time, they didn't barge in. They rang the doorbell like proper visitors. I opened the door to find Scarlett alone, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Hi, Megan, may I come in?" I let her in, though every instinct warned me not to. She sat on the sofa and took my credit card from her designer purse. "Here's your card," she said, placing it on the coffee table but not pushing it toward me. "But before I give it back, I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About why you suddenly don't trust us. About why you're acting like we're strangers instead of family." "I haven't changed. Scarlett, I'm just protecting my finances." "Protecting your money from what? From whom?" "From us, your own family." She stood and began walking around my living room, touching photo frames, adjusting cushions as if the space belonged to her. "Megan, you know Andrew and I love you very much. You know we would never do anything to hurt you. But lately, it seems like you see us as enemies." "I don't see you as enemies. I just want to know exactly how my money is being spent." "Exactly." She turned to me with an exaggerated, wounded expression. "Don't you trust my judgment after 2 years of being married to your son? You still think I'm untrustworthy." "You're not a stranger, Scarlett, but my money is still mine." She sat down again, closer to me this time. "Look, Megan, I understand you feel uncomfortable. It's natural. When a woman reaches a certain age, it's normal to become more cautious, even a little paranoid about money." "A certain age?" The phrase hung in the air like a subtle threat. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing negative. Of course, it's just that sometimes older people worry excessively about small things. They become a little paranoid." Paranoid, the same word Andrew had used. Paranoid for wanting to control my own credit card. "Paranoid for thinking your family is stealing from you," Scarlett clarified, her voice silky. The word stealing sent a jolt through me. She had used the word stealing. Who said anything about stealing? You did, Megan, with your actions. "Blocking the card," requesting detailed reports, treating us like criminals. What is that if not accusing us of theft? I stood up, needing physical distance from this conversation. Scarlett, I just want my card back. Of course. Here it is. She finally pushed the card toward me. I took it and slipped it into my pocket. But Megan, she continued in a soft voice, I hope you understand this will make things more complicated for everyone. Every time we have an emergency, we'll have to bother you. Every time we need something urgent, you'll have to go out of your way to help us. That's fine. I can handle that. Are you sure? Because sometimes emergencies happen at odd hours. Sometimes we need things when you're asleep or when you can't leave the house. Was she threatening me or merely outlining practical scenarios? We'll handle each situation as it comes. Scarlett nodded slowly. If that's what you want, she stood to leave. I just hope you don't regret it when you see how complicated everything becomes. I walked her to the door. Before exiting, she turned back to me. You know what the saddest part is? Megan, after 2 years of treating you like my own mother, you now see me as a stranger. That hurts deeply. For a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. I don't see you as a stranger. Scarlett, I see you as my son's wife. But my money is still mine. She nodded sadly and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. Scarlett's words replayed in my mind. Was I being paranoid? Was it abnormal for a 70-year-old woman to want to control her own finances? Or was I truly becoming a distrustful old woman? I took out the photocopy of my card I had found in my lockbox, studying it under the bedside lamp. It was a perfect, usable copy. Someone had planned this methodically. And then I understood the truth. I wasn't becoming paranoid. I had been too trusting for far too long. But I didn't know then that the worst was yet to come. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever experienced someone taking advantage of your generosity? Comment the city you're watching from below. On Monday morning, the detailed report from my bank arrived by secure email. 5 pages of transactions told the complete story of how I had lost $50,000 in 2 years. Every purchase had a date, time, location, and amount. Reading through it was like examining the diary of a stranger's life, a life of luxury and indulgence that I had unknowingly funded. I sat at my dining room table with a cup of coffee and began to study each line. What I discovered took my breath away. There were transactions at times when I was sleeping, purchases at stores in neighboring towns I rarely visited, and most disturbingly, cash withdrawals from ATMs at 200 a.m. How could someone withdraw money at 200 a.m. when I was asleep in my bed, with trembling fingers? I dialed Andrew's number. I needed answers before my imagination created scenarios I didn't want to contemplate. Hello, Mom. How are you? His voice sounded cautious. Andrew, my card has been used when I wasn't present. A long pause followed. What exactly do you mean? I mean it's been used without my knowledge when I was at home, in bed, asleep. Mom, you gave us permission to use the card for emergencies. Sometimes emergencies don't happen during convenient hours. Money was taken from ATMs at 2 in the morning. Oh, that was one time we needed cash urgently for a taxi after dinner. We were out late and didn't have any on us. One time the report shows it was 6 times in the last 3 months. Mom, I'm not going to keep a detailed log of every emergency to report back to you as if we're children. His tone had become defensive, impatient. Andrew, it's 6 withdrawals of $300 each 1-800s in cash. That's not a trivial amount. They were all for legitimate expenses. I don't understand why you're suddenly treating us like criminals. I'm not treating you like criminals. I'm just trying to understand how my money was spent. You know what? Mom, I think we need a serious conversation. Scarlett and I are coming over. Andrew, The line went dead before I could finish. I stared at the phone, my stomach churning with anxiety. I didn't want another confrontation, but I knew it was inevitable. While waiting for them to arrive, I continued reviewing the report. Then I found something that made me physically ill, 2 simultaneous transactions in different locations. A purchase at an expensive restaurant at the same time as a purchase at a clothing store 12 miles away. It was physically impossible for a single person to make both purchases at the exact same time. which meant they had made additional copies of my card. 40 minutes later, Andrew and Scarlett walked into my house. This time, they didn't ring the doorbell. They used the key I had given them for emergencies years ago. "Mom, we need to talk," Andrew sadly said, his voice controlled but tense. Scarlett looked different today, less conciliatory, more determined. She sat across from me with her arms crossed defensively. "Megan, this is getting out of control," she began. "Your suspicions, your accusations, your obsessive review of every expense. It's not normal behavior. It's not normal to want to know how my own money is being spent. It's not normal to treat your family like they're scammers." Andrew interjected. "I placed the bank report on the coffee table between us. Then explain this to me. 2 purchases at the exact same time in different locations." Andrew took the sheets and quickly scanned them. "What purchases? Friday, April 15th. A $200 purchase at the Grand Table Restaurant at 8:15 p.m. at the exact same time. A $300 purchase at Elegance Boutique 12 miles away." Andrew and Scarlett exchanged a quick glance. "Oh, that," Scarlett said with a dismissive wave. "I was at the restaurant, and Andrew was buying me a surprise gift at the boutique. We used both cards at the same time. Both cards, your card and my card," Andrew explained. "But my card got declined that day, so I had to use yours for the gift, too." The explanation sounded rehearsed, too perfect, but I had no way to prove they were lying. "How many copies of my card exist?" I asked directly. "Copies," Scarlett feigned confusion. "What copies?" I retrieved the photocopy from my pocket and placed it on the table. "This copy, with your handwriting on it." Scarlett picked it up and examined it as if seeing it for the first time. "Oh, I made this copy months ago so I'd have the numbers in case I lost the original card during an emergency. Is that wrong? Did you make more copies?" "No, of course not. Why would I to make simultaneous purchases in different places?" Andrew stood up abruptly. "Mom, stop. We can't take these accusations anymore." "They're not accusations. Andrew, they're legitimate questions about my own money. They're accusations of fraud. You're accusing us of stealing from you. I just want explanations." Scarlett stood as well and approached me. "Megan, do you know how deeply this hurts us? Do you understand how it feels for your own mother-in-law to think you're a thief?" Her eyes filled with tears, but this time, they didn't move me. "I just want the truth. The truth is you're becoming paranoid," Andrew said, his voice rising. "The truth is that every time we need your help, you make us feel like criminals. The truth is," Scarlett continued with a trembling voice, "we're considering distancing ourselves from you until you get professional help." "Professional help," I repeated, stunned. "Yes, Mom," Andrew's voice softened slightly. "I think you should talk to a doctor. These personality changes, this paranoia, this distrust of your own family, it's not normal at your age. My personality hasn't changed. I'm just protecting my finances." "Your personality has changed," Scarlett insisted. "Before, you were generous, loving, trusting. Now you're suspicious, stingy, hostile. Stingy for not wanting to give away $50,000. "It hasn't been $50,000, Andrew protested. I gathered all the bank statements and spread them across the table. "The numbers are right here. Count it yourself." Neither of them even glanced at the papers. "I'm not going to participate in this obsession of yours with keeping exact accounts of every favor you've done for us," Andrew said dismissively. "We're family. Favors 50,000 are favors. Yes, Mom favors from a mother to her son. It's what normal families do. Normal families don't hide copies of credit cards." Scarlett picked up the photocopy from the table. "Do you want me to tear it up? Will that make you feel better?" She ripped the paper into small pieces and let them fall onto the table. "There. Are you happy now? How many other copies did you make?" "None. I didn't make any other copies." "Then explain the late-night withdrawals and the simultaneous purchases." "I already explained them." Scarlett's composure was slipping. Andrew approached and placed his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, this has to stop. You're destroying our family relationship over money." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just protecting what's mine." "Protecting it from what from us?" protecting my finances. Your money isn't in danger with us, Scarlett said softly. Your money is in danger with you. What does that mean? Do you know how many people your age lose all their savings by making poor decisions, by becoming paranoid and isolating themselves from their families? Poor decisions like trusting you. Poor decisions like pushing away the only people who truly care about you because of unfounded suspicions. Andrew replied coldly. He removed his hand from my shoulder. Mom, I'm going to make you a proposal. Give us one last chance to prove we're worthy of your trust. Give us access to your card for one more month. If at the end of that month you're not completely satisfied with how we've managed the expenses, we'll never ask you for money again. Scarlett nodded enthusiastically. It's an excellent idea. We'll show you that you can trust us completely. I looked at them both, my son and my daughter-in-law, asking for one last chance to prove their honesty. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like something a normal family might do. But something in their eyes told me it wasn't a request. It was a demand disguised as a compromise. I need some time to think, I said finally. Time to think about what? Mom, if you trust your own family. Time to decide if I'm making a mistake. Andrew sighed heavily. Fine, take your time. But in the meantime, we're also going to take some time. What does that mean? It means that until you decide to trust us again, we're going to keep our distance. We don't want to keep feeling like criminals with every visit. They headed for the door. Before leaving, Scarlett turned around. I hope that when you reconsider all this, you realize that we are the only thing you have. Without family. Money is worthless. The door closed behind them, and I was left alone with the papers scattered on the table and the weight of a decision I didn't know how to make. Was I a paranoid mother destroying her family relationship over money? Or was I an older woman being manipulated by her own family? I didn't know which possibility frightened me more. For a week, I heard nothing from Andrew or Scarlett. The silence felt strange after 2 years of constant calls asking for money, surprise visits, and urgent emergencies that required my credit card. At first, the silence was a relief. I could water my plants without interruptions, read my books in peace, and cook for myself without preparing extra portions. But after 5 days, the silence began to feel like a punishment. Was this what they wanted, to isolate me until I gave in to their demands? On Saturday morning, while organizing my closet, I found something that made me pause. At the bottom of the last drawer, wrapped in an old handkerchief, was the pearl necklace Richard had given me for our 15th anniversary. I hadn't worn it in years. I took it out and held it up to the light. The pearls were still beautiful, perfect, and lustrous after so many years. I remembered the night Richard placed it around my neck, his hands trembling slightly as he struggled with the clasp. For the strongest woman I know, he had whispered, so you never forget your worth. My worth. When had I started to doubt it? I decided to put on the necklace and leave the house. I needed fresh air, needed to see people, needed to remember that a world existed beyond this situation with Andrew and Scarlett. I drove to the downtown farmer's market where I had bought vegetables for 20 years. Mr. Garcia, the owner of the fruit stand, greeted me with his familiar wrinkled smile. Mrs. Lewis, so good to see you. How have you been? I've been okay, Mr. Garcia. A little worried lately, but I'm managing. Worried about what? Your health, your family? He nodded, understanding. Families can be complicated. I have 4 children, and each one gives me a different kind of headache. Did you ever feel that your children saw you only as a source of money? Mr. Garcia stopped arranging his oranges and looked at me directly. Mrs. Lewis, are you going through something like that? I don't know if I'm exaggerating or if it's really happening. Want some advice from someone who's lived 75 years in this world? I nodded. When your own instincts tell you something isn't right, listen to them. A mother's instincts never lie. His words stayed with me all the way back home. That afternoon, while I was tending to my begonias, my phone rang. It was Andrew. Hello, Mom, how are you? Hello, son, I'm fine. And you? We've been thinking a lot. Scarlett and I discussed the whole situation and came to a conclusion. What conclusion? That maybe you're right to want more control over your money. that maybe we've been too casual about financial matters. I was surprised. I hadn't expected that response. I'm glad to hear that. Andrew? So, we want to propose something different. Instead of using your card, we want you to give us a fixed amount every month like an allowance. That way, you'll know exactly how much you're giving us, and we'll know what we can count on. An allowance. Yes, an amount that you consider reasonable for our expenses. We were thinking maybe $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month? I repeated, stunned. $18,000 a year for expenses you consider necessary. It's less than we've been spending on average these past few months. We thought it would be a way to cut down expenses and give you more control. Why do you need $1,500 a month if you both work? Because we're trying to grow professionally. Mom, we need appropriate clothes for networking events. We need to maintain certain social standards. We need to invest in our future, and our salaries barely cover the rent and basic necessities. Then maybe you should reduce your expenses. There was a long pause. Do you want us to live like we're poor? I want you to live within your means. Our means include having a mother who can help us grow and achieve our potential. I don't understand why you suddenly want us to struggle on our own when you have the resources to make our lives easier. Because they're not my lives. Andrew, they're your lives. We're family. Mom, your life and our lives are connected. His tone had changed. The conversation was heading into familiar territory again. Andrew, I'm not going to give you $1,500 a month. How much then $1,800? I don't know. I need to think about it. Think about it, Mom. We've been waiting a week for an answer. And I've been supporting you financially for 2 years without question. I need time to decide how to proceed. You know what? Forget it. Forget the whole proposal. Andrew, no. We're not going to beg for your help anymore. Scarlett was right, there are other options. What other options? Options that don't require begging my own mother for money. He hung up before I could respond. That night, I couldn't sleep. What did he mean by other options? What was Andrew planning on Monday morning? I found out. I was having breakfast when someone knocked on the door. It was a young man in a suit carrying a briefcase. Mrs. Megan Lewis. Yes, that's me. I'm Mr. Nathan Roberts from the law firm of Reynolds & Associates. Your son, Andrew Lewis, has retained our services to review your mental and financial capacity. I felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. Excuse me. Your son is concerned about your mental well-being. According to him, you have shown signs of paranoia, confusion, and erratic decision-making regarding your finances. He is considering initiating a legal process to obtain guardianship over your financial affairs. Guardianship, I whispered. Yes, ma'am. A process where a judge determines if you are capable of managing your own financial affairs or if you need someone else to handle them for you. Someone like my son. Exactly. I sat down in the nearest chair because my legs could no longer support me. What do I need to do to defend myself? First, I recommend you hire a lawyer. Second, you should undergo medical examinations to prove your mental capacity. Third, you should gather evidence that you manage your finances responsibly. How much time do I have? If they decide to proceed formally, you will receive an official summons with 30 days to respond. This is merely a courtesy visit to inform you of the potential action. The young lawyer left, leaving me alone with the realization that my own son was considering legally taking control of my money. My own son. That afternoon, I called my neighbor, Barbara Thompson. I had known her for 12 years, but we had never developed a close friendship. Still, I needed to talk to someone, and she had always seemed like a sensible woman. Barbara, could you come over? I need some advice. Of course. Megan, I'll be right there. When she arrived, I told her everything: the loans that became permanent, the credit card they never returned, the unauthorized purchases, the threat of legal guardianship, everything. Barbara listened in silence, nodding occasionally without judgment. You know what I think, Megan, she said finally. I think your son and his wife are systematically manipulating you, and now that you're defending yourself, they're escalating to more aggressive tactics. You think I'm being manipulated? I'm certain of it, and I'm equally certain you're not the first older woman this has happened to. What should I do? Fight with every legal tool you have. Don't let them take your money or your dignity. What if I lose my son in the process? Barbara took my hands in hers. Megan, you already lost your son. The Andrew you raised. The one who respected you. The one who was grateful for your sacrifices. That Andrew no longer exists. What you have now is a stranger who wants your money and is willing to have you declared incompetent to get it. Her words were like a blow to my chest, but also strangely liberating. She was right. My son was already gone. Do you know a good lawyer? I know the best lawyer in the city for these cases. His name is Martin Daniels. He specializes in defending older adults against family financial abuse. Martin Daniels. The name etched itself in my mind. Can you give me his number? I'll do you one better. I'll go with you to his office tomorrow. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly not because my problems had disappeared, but because I had finally decided to fight. My son had chosen money over me. Now I was going to choose my dignity over him. On Tuesday morning, Barbara accompanied me to the law office downtown. Martin Daniels turned out to be a man in his early 60s with salt and pepper hair, intelligent eyes behind silver-rimmed glasses, and a calm, deliberate manner of speaking that immediately made me feel confident. Mrs. Lewis, tell me exactly what has been happening, he said as he took notes on a yellow legal pad. I recounted everything from the beginning, the loans that were never repaid, the credit card used without my authorization, the unauthorized copies, the late-night withdrawals, and finally, the threat of legal guardianship. Do you have documentation of all these transactions? I have all the bank statements and the detailed report I requested last week. Excellent. Did you ever sign a document giving your son or his wife permanent authorization to use your card? Never. Did you ever authorize them to make copies of your card? Never. Martin stopped writing and looked at me directly. Mrs. Lewis, what you're describing is family financial abuse. It's a crime, and we also have civil options to recover your money. How common is this? More common than people think. The most frequent victims are older women with savings who trust family members who gradually appropriate their resources. How will we proceed? First, we'll protect you from the guardianship lawsuit. Second, we'll document the financial abuse thoroughly. Third, we'll recover your money. And fourth, we'll make sure this doesn't happen again. I felt an immense relief wash over me. For the first time in months, I finally had someone on my side who understood the situation. How much will all this cost? My fees are $3,000, but I consider that an investment to recover $50,000. I signed the contract that same day. Over the next week, Martin and his team worked meticulously. They requested security camera footage from stores where my card had been used. They tracked IP addresses of online purchases. They documented every unauthorized transaction. What they found was worse than I had imagined. Mrs. Lewis, Martin told me during our second meeting, not only did they use your card without authorization, they also created fake credit accounts using your personal information. Fake credit accounts, yes, 3 additional credit cards, all in your name, but sent to your son's address. The statements show they've accumulated almost $15,000 in additional debt. $15,000 in debt I didn't even know existed. My heart raced. How is that possible? They had access to all your personal information, your social security number, date of birth, bank details. With that data, it's relatively easy to apply for credit online. Does this mean I owe that money? Not necessarily. We're going to dispute all those accounts as identity fraud, but we need to act quickly. That afternoon, Martin accompanied me to file fraud reports with the 3 major credit bureaus. We also filed a criminal complaint for identity theft and financial abuse. What will happen now? I asked. Your son will receive notification that you are disputing the debts and have filed criminal charges. They will probably contact you to try to reach an agreement. An agreement. They'll try to convince you to drop the charges in exchange for promises of repayment. Don't accept anything without consulting me first. He was right. On Friday night, my phone rang. It was Andrew. Mom, what have you done? His voice sounded different, scared, desperate. I've protected my finances, son. We got a court summons. We're being accused of fraud. Because you committed fraud. We didn't commit fraud. We're your family. Everything we did was with your knowledge. No, Andrew, it was not with my knowledge. Mom, you have to drop these charges. They're going to ruin our lives. You already ruined mine. Please, we'll pay all the money back. Just drop the charges. With what money are you going to pay back $50,000? We'll get the money. We'll take out a loan. We'll sell things. Whatever it takes. And the $15,000 in credit cards you opened in my name. There was silence on the other end of the line. How do you know about those? Because I hired a lawyer, Andrew. Because I investigated what you and Scarlett really did. Mom, those cards were for real emergencies. Scarlett needed medical treatments at clothing stores and expensive restaurants. Not all the purchases were frivolous. All the purchases were fraud. Andrew started to cry. It was the first time I had heard him cry since he was a child. Mom, please, we're your family. You can't destroy us over money. You already destroyed me over money. We'll pay everything back. Just give me one more chance. You've already had 2 years of chances. One more chance, please. No, Andrew, then this is war. His voice changed completely. The tears instantly gone, replaced by cold fury. If you don't drop the charges, we're going to proceed with the guardianship lawsuit. We're going to prove you're losing your mental capacity. We're going to get witnesses who say you've been behaving erratically. What witnesses? Neighbors, shopkeepers, people who have noticed your paranoid behavior. My behavior isn't paranoid. It's defensive. A judge will decide that. He hung up. The next day, the real war began. First came the calls Andrew, Scarlett, unknown numbers all leaving messages on my answering machine, some pleading, others threatening, all trying to convince me to drop the charges. Then the visits started. Andrew would show up at different times of the day, knocking insistently, yelling from the street that he just wanted to talk. Scarlett sent her friends to knock on my door with invented pretexts. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants on my patio, I heard voices on the street. 3 women I didn't recognize were standing in front of my house, talking loudly enough for me to hear. That's the house of the lady who's accusing her own son of stealing, one said. How embarrassing for the family. Sometimes elderly parents have financial problems and need help, but they're too proud to admit it, another replied. At that age, it's normal for them to become confused and paranoid. The third added, my grandmother also got like that before she didn't finish the sentence, but the message was clear. They were spreading rumors about my mental state. I called Martin immediately. They're doing exactly what I expected, he told me. They're trying to create a narrative that you're mentally incompetent. It's a common tactic in these cases. What should we do? Document everything. Record the conversations. Take photos of the unwanted visits. Keep a log of all harassment. We're going to use it against them. That night, someone vandalized my car. 2 words were spray painted across the driver's side door. Crazy miser. The message was clear. While I fought legally, they would fight psychologically. I called Barbara to tell her what was happening. Megan, you can't stay in that house alone. Come stay with me until this is resolved. I'm not going to let them run me out of my own home. Then I'll stay with you. That night, Barbara slept on my sofa. Her presence comforted me, but it also saddened me. At 70 years old, I needed protection from my own family. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. I answered, thinking it might be an emergency. I hope you're happy, Scarlett's voice hissed, slightly slurred as if she'd been drinking. I hope you're happy destroying a family for dirty money. Dirty money. The money your husband made from his shady business deals. You think we don't know where your savings really came from? What are you talking about? Ask the people in the neighborhood what kind of man Richard Lewis really was. Ask them what they thought of his late-night meetings and mystery cash deposits. She hung up before I could respond. Richard had been an accountant of absolute integrity. He had worked for the same respected firm for 30 years. He hadn't had any late-night meetings or mystery cash. But now I understood how far they were willing to go to destroy my reputation. They were attacking the memory of my deceased husband. Barbara, I whispered in the darkness. I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. I know. she replied from the sofa. "But we're going to stand together through it." For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. I had Barbara, I had Martin, and I had the truth on my side. But I didn't know if that would be enough against the desperation of people who had lost access to easy money and were willing to do anything to get it back. The following morning, I woke to find my front lawn covered with flyers. Large bold text proclaimed, "Concerned about elderly dementia, call 555-0123 for help." Several neighbors were already outside, picking up the papers from their own yards with confused expressions. "This is getting ridiculous," Barbara said, helping me gather the flyers. "They're trying to make the whole neighborhood think you're mentally unfit." I nodded, struggling to maintain my composure. "Martin said to document everything," I reminded her, taking pictures with my phone. Later that day, Andrew showed up at my door with a woman he introduced as Dr. Reynolds, a geriatric specialist. "Mom, we're just concerned about your health. Dr. Reynolds can evaluate you right here at home. It's completely confidential." "I have my own doctor, Andrew," I replied through the barely open door. "Dr. Washington has been my physician for 15 years, and she has no concerns about my cognitive health." "But Dr. Washington isn't a specialist in geriatric care," the woman interjected smoothly. "At your age, specialized care is critical. I'm not letting you in, and I'm not being evaluated by a doctor you've selected," I said firmly, then closed and locked the door. I immediately called Martin to report the incident. "Classic intimidation tactic," he confirmed. "They're trying to build a case by having their own doctor declare you incompetent. Keep your doors locked and don't let them in without me present." The harassment intensified over the next few days. Anonymous letters arrived in my mailbox, suggesting I join support groups for memory issues. Neighbors began giving me concerned looks. The checkout clerk at the grocery store asked if I needed help remembering my PIN when I used my debit card. Someone was methodically spreading rumors about my mental state throughout the community. One evening, as Barbara and I prepared dinner, we heard a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Scarlett standing on my porch with a young man who was recording with a professional-looking camera. "Mrs. Lewis," Scarlett called loudly when she realized I was watching. "We're documenting your refusal to communicate for the court. Your silence is being interpreted as evidence of your declining faculties." "Don't open it," Barbara warned. "They're trying to provoke you into saying something they can use against you." I called the police, who arrived 15 minutes later. By then, Scarlett and the cameraman were gone, but they had left a business card for Family Intervention Services wedged in my doorframe. The officer, a kind-faced woman named Officer Davis, took my statement with obvious sympathy. "We've seen this kind of elder harassment before, Mrs. Lewis. I'm going to file a report, and you should consider getting a restraining order." "My lawyer is already working on that," I assured her. The next morning, Martin called with unexpected news. "Mrs. Lewis, I've discovered something interesting. The Dr. Reynolds who tried to evaluate you yesterday isn't a licensed medical professional. She's an actress Scarlett knows from her community theater group." An actress. I was stunned by their audacity. They sent a fake doctor to my house. Yes, and that's going to work in our favor. Impersonating a medical professional is a serious offense. We're adding it to our case. That afternoon, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Lewis, this is James Patterson from First National Bank. I'm calling about some irregularities with your accounts." "What kind of irregularities?" "We've noticed some unusual withdrawal patterns that may indicate cognitive decline. Your son has expressed concerns." I interrupted him. "Are you actually from First National Bank, Mr. Patterson?" "Of course, ma'am." "Then you'd know I don't have accounts at First National Bank. All my banking is with Citizens Trust." There was a brief silence before the line went dead. I immediately reported the call to Martin, who added it to our growing file of harassment evidence. "They're getting desperate," he observed. That's actually a good sign, but the psychological toll was mounting. I found myself checking the locks multiple times before bed, startling at unexpected noises, and hesitating before answering the phone. The constant stress left me exhausted. Barbara noticed my fatigue. "Megan, you need to take care of yourself. This legal battle won't matter if your health suffers." She was right. That evening, I soaked in a warm bath with lavender oil, something I hadn't done in years. As I relaxed in the fragrant water, I thought about Richard. What would he have done in this situation? Fight for what's right, Meg. I could almost hear him say, but remember to take care of yourself along the way. The next morning brought a new tactic. A large moving van pulled up in front of my house. 2 men in uniforms approached my door with a document. Mrs. Lewis, we're here to move your furniture to Golden Sunset Assisted Living Facility. Your son arranged everything. I have no plans to move to any facility, I said firmly. Please leave my property immediately. Ma'am, we have the paperwork right here. It's all been authorized. By whom? Not by me. The men looked confused. Your son said you agreed to this move. He said you signed the forms last week. I signed nothing. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police. They retreated to their truck to make some calls. 10 minutes later, they drove away, clearly embarrassed by the situation. I called Martin immediately. They're now trying to forcibly move me from my home. This crosses a line, Martin said, his usual calm voice now tight with anger. We're filing for an emergency restraining order today. Meet me at my office in an hour. As I prepared to leave, I noticed a car slowly driving past my house. It was Scarlett, watching. Our eyes met briefly through the windshield. Instead of looking away in shame, she smiled a cold, calculating smile that chilled me to the bone. This woman, who had called me Mom for 2 years, who had shared meals at my table and slept in my guest room, was now orchestrating a campaign to destroy my reputation, my autonomy, and possibly my sanity. In that moment, I understood what we were truly fighting for. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my very freedom. When Barbara arrived to drive me to Martin's office, I was ready. I had changed from my usual casual clothes into the navy blue suit I had worn to Richard's funeral. My hair was neatly styled, my makeup carefully applied, and around my neck gleamed the pearl necklace Richard had given me. You look like you're going to war, Barbara observed. I am, I replied. And I intend to win. I'm glad you're still with me. If you've just joined, please comment the city you're watching from below. The courthouse stood imposing against the morning sky, its gray stone facade a testament to the permanence of justice. Martin and I arrived early, walking up the wide steps with Barbara following close behind for moral support. Inside, the marble floors echoed with our footsteps as we made our way to courtroom 3. Remember, Martin said quietly, stay calm no matter what they say. Judge Harrington is known for his fairness, but he has little patience for emotional displays. I nodded, clutching my handbag tightly. Inside were all the original bank statements, the detailed transaction report, and the photocopy of my credit card with Scarlett's handwriting, all safely preserved in plastic sleeves. I had dressed carefully in a conservative navy blue dress with my pearl necklace, wanting to project the image of the composed, mentally sound woman I was. Andrew and Scarlett were already seated on the opposite side of the courtroom with their lawyer, a sleek young man in an expensive suit who kept shuffling through papers nervously. When our eyes met, Andrew quickly looked away, but Scarlett held my gaze with cold defiance. She looked different today, her usual stylish attire replaced by a modest beige outfit that made her appear younger, more vulnerable. The transformation was calculated. I knew. Everything about Scarlett was calculated. Judge Michael Harrington entered, and we all rose. He was a man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. After the formalities, he reviewed the files before him with methodical precision. This is a complex case, he began. With serious allegations on both sides, Mrs. Lewis is alleging financial abuse and identity theft against her son, Andrew Lewis, and his wife, Scarlett Wright. Lewis, conversely, Mr. Lewis is petitioning for guardianship of his mother's finances on grounds of diminished mental capacity and erratic financial behavior. He looked up, his gaze moving between both parties. We will address both matters today. Mrs. Lewis's complaint will be heard first. Martin presented our case methodically. He displayed enlarged copies of my bank statements on an easel, highlighting the pattern of escalating withdrawals. He showed the credit card statements with unauthorized purchases circled in red. He presented the detailed report from the bank showing simultaneous transactions in different locations and late-night ATM withdrawals. "Your Honor," Martin said, "over a 2-year period, the defendant systematically depleted Mrs. Lewis's retirement savings by approximately $50,000 through unauthorized use of her credit card and direct cash transfers. When Mrs. Lewis finally took steps to protect her finances, they escalated to identity theft by opening 3 fraudulent credit accounts in her name, accumulating an additional $15,000 in debt." He handed the judge a folder. "These are the credit account statements, all in Mrs. Lewis's name but sent to the defendant's address. Mrs. Lewis had no knowledge of these accounts until our investigation." Andrew's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, rose to object. "Your Honor, my clients had verbal authorization for all financial transactions. Mrs. Lewis willingly shared her credit card information and personal data as part of their family financial arrangement." "Did Mrs. Lewis sign any written authorization?" Judge Harrington asked. "No, Your Honor, but in close family relationships, verbal agreements are common. Mrs. Lewis never objected to any transactions until her recent changes in behavior." "What changes in behavior are you alleging? Paranoia, suspicion, hostility toward family members, classic signs of early cognitive decline in elderly individuals." I felt my face flush with anger, but remembered Martin's advice and kept my expression neutral. Martin countered immediately. "Your Honor, we have evidence that directly contradicts this claim." He produced another folder. "These are the security camera recordings from several retail establishments where Mrs. Lewis's card was used while she was demonstrably elsewhere." He displayed a split screen on the courtroom monitor. On one side was footage of Scarlett using my card at a boutique. On the other was my phone record showing I was on a call from my home landline at the exact same time. Mrs. Lewis could not have authorized these purchases in person because she was physically elsewhere. Furthermore, Martin produced the torn pieces of the photocopy I had found, now reassembled and preserved in a plastic sleeve. "This is a copy of Mrs. Lewis's credit card with Mrs. Scarlett Lewis's handwriting on it. Note the instruction, 'For emergencies, Sci.' This demonstrates premeditated intent to use the card without direct authorization." Judge Harrington examined the evidence carefully. "Mr. Peterson, how do you explain these discrepancies?" Andrew's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, in any family, financial matters are often handled informally. My clients believed they were acting within the parameters of their understanding with Mrs. Lewis. That doesn't explain the credit accounts opened in Mrs. Lewis's name without her knowledge," the judge observed. "Those accounts were opened for family emergencies," Andrew interjected, unable to contain himself. "Mr. Lewis," Judge Harrington said sternly, "you will speak when addressed by the court. The most compelling evidence came from my longtime physician, Dr. Lisa Washington, who testified about my mental state. I've been Mrs. Lewis's doctor for 15 years, she stated confidently. Her annual checkups, including cognitive assessments, show no signs of dementia, confusion, or any mental impairment. In fact, Mrs. Lewis scores above average for her age group on all cognitive tests. Could stress cause temporary paranoia or confusion? Mr. Peterson asked during cross-examination. Stress can certainly affect anyone's mood and behavior, Dr. Washington conceded. But it doesn't create the kind of sustained cognitive impairment that would warrant legal intervention. Mrs. Lewis's judgment and decision-making capabilities remain intact. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with my head high, though my heart pounded in my chest. After being sworn in, I faced the courtroom, determined to speak my truth calmly and clearly. Mrs. Lewis, Martin began, can you explain how this financial situation with your son and daughter-in-law developed? It started with small loans after their wedding, I explained. $200 here, $300 there. They always promised to repay me, but never did. Instead, the requests grew larger and more frequent. Eventually, Scarlett asked to use my credit card for what she called emergencies. What began as a one-time favor became routine. When I finally checked my statements thoroughly, I discovered thousands in unauthorized purchases. Did you ever explicitly authorize your son or his wife to open credit accounts in your name? Never. I had no knowledge of these accounts until my lawyer discovered them. What happened when you tried to regain control of your finances? When I blocked my credit card after discovering a $1.200 unauthorized purchase. Andrew and Scarlett became hostile. They accused me of being paranoid and threatened to cut me off from the family if I didn't continue providing financial support. When I still refused, they escalated to trying to gain legal control over my money through guardianship. When Andrew testified, his story changed several times. First, he claimed I had given verbal permission for all purchases. Then, under the judge's persistent questioning, he admitted some expenditures had been impulsive decisions. Finally, he acknowledged the additional credit accounts had been opened without my explicit knowledge, but insisted it had been for legitimate family needs. Mr. Lewis, Judge Harrington interrupted, his voice firm. Regardless of your intentions, opening credit accounts using another person's personal information without their explicit authorization constitutes identity fraud, a federal crime. Scarlett's testimony was even less consistent. She alternated between tears and defiance, claiming one moment that everything had been done with my knowledge, then suggesting the next that I was suffering from memory issues and had forgotten giving permission. Mrs. Lewis, the judge asked her directly, did you ever see Mrs. Megan Lewis sign any document authorizing you to use her credit information? Not exactly sign, Your Honor, but she verbally, a simple yes or no will suffice. No, Your Honor, Scarlett admitted reluctantly. After 4 hours of testimony, Judge Harrington called a brief recess to review all evidence. Those 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat silently between Martin and Barbara, watching Andrew and Scarlett whispering urgently with their lawyer across the room. When the judge returned, the courtroom fell silent. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I am prepared to rule on both matters before this court. Judge Harrington began. First, regarding the petition for guardianship of Megan Lewis's financial affairs, I find absolutely no evidence supporting the claim of diminished capacity. Mrs. Lewis has demonstrated sound judgment, clear memory, and appropriate protective actions regarding her finances. The guardianship petition is denied completely. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me. Second, regarding Mrs. Lewis's complaint of financial abuse and identity fraud, the evidence is overwhelming and conclusive. The defendants systematically misused Mrs. Lewis's financial resources without proper authorization and fraudulently established credit accounts in her name. He turned to address Andrew and Scarlett directly. The court orders immediate repayment of the documented $50,000 misappropriated from Mrs. Lewis's accounts, plus legal costs. The 3 fraudulent credit accounts shall be immediately canceled, with all associated debt removed from Mrs. Lewis's credit history. Furthermore, given the harassment evidence presented, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting Andrew and Scarlett Lewis from contacting Megan Lewis directly for 1 year. Any future communication must be conducted through legal representatives. He paused, his expression grave. The behavior documented in this case represents a systematic pattern of elder financial abuse. Mrs. Lewis's actions to protect her finances were not only appropriate, but necessary. This guardianship lawsuit appears to have been filed as an intimidation tactic to maintain unauthorized access to the plaintiff's resources. He turned to me with unexpected gentleness. Mrs. Lewis, the court recognizes the emotional difficulty of bringing action against family members. Your courage in standing up for yourself is commendable. Thank you, Your Honor, I said, my voice barely steady. After adjourning the court, Martin explained that recovering the money would take time, but the court order legally obligated Andrew and Scarlett to begin payments immediately. If they failed to comply, they would face additional charges for contempt of court. As we left the courthouse, a local news reporter approached. Mrs. Lewis, do you have a statement about winning your case against your son's financial abuse? I hesitated, then replied, Justice was served today, but there are no winners in family tragedies. I hope my experience encourages other seniors to protect themselves and seek help when needed. That night, in the quiet of my home, I sat in my favorite armchair with a cup of tea, looking out at my garden. The red begonias were blooming beautifully. The white geraniums stood tall and strong. Everything I had nurtured with love was thriving despite the storm we had weathered. For the first time in 2 years, my money was safe. My house was protected. My future was back in my own hands. But along with the relief came profound sadness. I had won the legal battle. I had recovered my money. I had protected my dignity. But I had lost my son, the Andrew I had raised, the boy I had nursed through childhood illnesses, the young man I had supported through college. That Andrew was gone, replaced by a stranger who had been willing to declare me mentally incompetent to access my money. Justice had triumphed. But my mother's heart was broken. 6 months after the hearing, my life had found a new normal. The court-ordered payments arrived punctually each month, gradually restoring my financial security. More importantly, I had regained my peace of mind. Martin diligently supervised Andrew and Scarlett's compliance with the court order, ensuring every payment was made on time. During those months of legal work, our conversations had evolved beyond legal matters. I discovered that Martin had been a widower for 6 years, with 2 adult children who lived in other states, and that he shared my passion for gardening. "How do you get your bougainvillea to bloom so magnificently?" he asked one afternoon while we were reviewing the latest payment documents on my patio. "Patience and consistent care," I replied, "like everything worthwhile in life." His visits became more frequent and less professional. He would arrive with pretexts about documents to sign, but stay for coffee and conversation. We discussed books, politics, our experiences of marriage, and our hopes for the future. His company made me feel valued, not for my money, but for who I was as a person. One Sunday afternoon in October, as we shared tea and homemade cookies in my garden, Martin took my hand. "Megan, these months with you have been the happiest I've known since I lost my wife. You've restored my faith that life can still hold joy and companionship at our age. And you've restored my confidence that good people exist who don't want to take advantage of me," I replied, surprised by the emotion in my voice. "Does it seem absurd that a 62-year-old lawyer is thinking about courting his 70-year-old client?" I laughed, feeling a warmth I hadn't experienced in years. "It seems perfectly wonderful that a 70-year-old woman is feeling butterflies in her stomach like a schoolgirl." Martin and I began dating properly: dinners at restaurants, walks in the park, visits to art exhibitions. He treated me with a respect and consideration I had almost forgotten existed. When he proposed 6 months later, I accepted without hesitation. We married in a small, intimate ceremony, just the 2 of us, Barbara as my witness, Martin's brother as his, and the judge who pronounced us husband and wife. It was perfect in its simplicity. Martin moved into my house, bringing his law books, his jazz record collection, and a quiet joy that filled every room. Together, we redesigned Richard's study as our shared library. Together, we expanded the garden with new varieties of roses. Together, we built routines that brought us both contentment. In the afternoons while I baked, Martin worked on pro bono cases, helping other older adults who were victims of family financial abuse. It had become his specialty after my case, and he found deep satisfaction in protecting vulnerable people. "Every case I win is a victory for human dignity," he would tell me, "and I owe it all to your courage." Megan. Andrew attempted to contact me once, 8 months after my marriage to Martin. He called on a Tuesday evening. "Mom, it's Andrew. I know I'm not supposed to call you directly, but I needed to tell you something. Andrew, you know you can't contact me without going through Martin. I just want to say I'm sorry. Scarlett and I are getting divorced. She left with another man, taking everything we managed to save after the lawsuit. I'm left with nothing, no money, no wife, and no mother, all because I followed her schemes." I felt a pang of maternal pain, but I was no longer the same woman who had been manipulated for years. "Andrew, I'm sorry you're going through this, but decisions have consequences. Can you ever forgive me?" "I've already forgiven you, son. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it definitely doesn't mean returning to how things were before. We might eventually rebuild some kind of relationship, but only if you truly change, not just because you need money again." That was the last time we spoke directly. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Andrew had moved to another city, taken a modest job as a bookkeeper, and was slowly rebuilding his life. A part of me, the mother I would always be, hoped that one day he would become the man I had tried to raise. but I no longer put my life on hold waiting for someone else to change. My days were full with Martin, with new friendships, with volunteer work at the local library, and with tending to my ever-expanding garden. Scarlett occasionally appeared in local social media posts, always with a different companion, always displaying new expensive purchases. I felt no anger toward her anymore, only pity for someone who measured life's worth solely in material possessions. On a warm spring morning, almost 2 years after the court case, I received an unexpected letter with a postmark from Seattle. Inside was a handwritten note from Andrew and a check for $5,000. Dear Mom, this is an additional payment beyond what the court ordered. I've been working hard and saving every penny I could to start making amends for the pain I caused you. I've been seeing a therapist who's helping me understand how I allowed greed and Scarlett's influence to override everything you taught me about integrity. I'm not asking for forgiveness or for you to welcome me back into your life. I just want you to know that your stand against our abuse forced me to face who I had become, and I'm working every day to be better, with respect and regret. Andrew, I showed the letter to Martin, who examined the check carefully. It seems genuine, he said. What will you do? After careful consideration, I deposited the check but sent half the amount to a newly established foundation for victims of elder financial abuse. The other half I put into a separate account, not for myself, but as the beginning of a trust fund for education, should Andrew ever have children who might need their grandmother's support. That summer, I was invited to speak at a community center about my experience. Standing before a room of seniors and their adult children, I shared the painful lessons I had learned. Financial abuse of older adults often begins subtly, I explained. Small loans that are never repaid, access to credit cards for emergencies, gradual escalation of financial demands. By the time many seniors realize what's happening, significant damage has been done. I outlined the warning signs and the protective measures seniors could take: regular review of financial statements, secure storage of personal information, establishing clear boundaries around financial assistance, and most importantly, not letting shame or family loyalty prevent them from seeking help. The hardest lesson I learned, I told them, was that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to exploit you. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. The presentation led to a monthly support group for seniors facing family financial pressures. I became known in our community as someone who would listen without judgment and guide others to appropriate resources. Many times, I sat with teary-eyed men and women who recognized their own situations in my story and finally found the courage to protect themselves. One elderly gentleman, after describing how his daughter and son-in-law had drained his savings, asked me the question I heard most frequently, "But if I stand up for myself, won't I lose my family?" That's the fear that keeps many of us silent, I acknowledged. But ask yourself, have you already lost the authentic relationship you thought you had as a relationship based on financial exploitation? Really the family connection you want to preserve? My work with seniors brought unexpected healing. Each time I helped someone else find their voice and protect their dignity, my own wounds healed a little more. On my 73rd birthday, Martin surprised me with a small party in our garden. Barbara was there, along with several friends from the support group and the library. As we enjoyed cake and laughter under the shade of the old oak tree, Martin raised his glass in a toast. To Megan, whose courage not only reclaimed her own life but has helped so many others find their strength. Later that evening, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight, I reflected on the journey of the past 3 years. "Do you have any regrets?" Martin asked, seeming to read my thoughts. "About standing up for myself." "Not one," I replied firmly. "About the years of manipulation I endured before finding my voice. Many do, but regrets don't change the past, they only steal from the present." "You're a wise woman, Megan Lewis Daniels." I smiled at the sound of my new hyphenated name. Not wise enough to avoid being exploited, but perhaps wise enough to learn from it. "That's the only wisdom that matters," Martin said, taking my hand. "The kind that transforms pain into purpose." 3 months later, I received another letter from Andrew, this one containing a sonogram image. He and a woman named Rachel were expecting a child, a girl. They planned to name her Megan. The letter included no requests, no hints about reconciliation or financial needs. Just a simple sharing of news he thought might matter to me. I wrote back with congratulations and enclosed a small handmade baby blanket. It wasn't forgiveness exactly that had already been given. It was something more tentative, but perhaps more important, the possibility of a new beginning. At 73, I had learned that it's never too late to defend your dignity, never too late to say no, never too late to start over. I had lost significant money and nearly lost my only son in the process. But I had gained something more valuable: my freedom, my self-respect, and the chance at true love in the most unexpected season of my life. Every morning, I wake in my own home, with my finances secure, beside a man who loves me for who I am rather than what I possess. It is a victory sweeter than I could have imagined. Life taught me that sometimes to gain everything, you must be willing to risk losing what you thought you couldn't live without. Did you like my story? Which city are you watching from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you for your sweet support. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.